be going over the most fundamental punch in the boxer's arsenal.
Probably the most important punch in boxing.
The most important punch in boxing.
The best punch in boxing.
The number one punch, and the last thing that should ever go.
There's no doubt about it, it is the premier weapon in the sport.
I still think it's the most important punch in boxing.
The jab.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that the jab is the number one punch in boxing, but the number of jabs in boxing depends on who you ask.
You can use the jab in different ways.
You should know there's a lot of ways to throw a jab.
Now, like I say, there's several variations of jab.
I mean, there's many different types of jab.
You got so many people that will try to tell you there's different types of jabs. I've heard that, and that's all great. It's actually one jab.
So who are we to believe? Are there different types of jabs? And if so, is it worth developing them? Or is our time better spent getting those 10,000 reps of the basic jab we all know and love? I think both sides make great points, and everybody's right. Although I see the jab as a category of punch rather than a single technique, I accept that they're all bound together by the same fundamentals, which supports the idea that there's really only one jab, only used in different ways.
It may come from a different angle, it may come from a different elevation or whatnot, but there's one jab.
So what we're looking at here is not really a difference of opinion, but rather a difference in jab definitions. We have some coaches narrowing the scope of their definition so much so that it only includes one or two functions of that particular jab type. In other words, they see every different use for the jab as its own technique, rather than just being another part of the multi-tool. For an example of this, in my list I've chosen to differentiate between the ranging jab and the control jab when they're really very similar, and technically up to a certain point they're almost identical, but they're used differently, so I've chosen to differentiate. This not only helps me structure my training so I can focus on developing specific tools, but also allows me to give my fighters clearer instructions. You might not agree with this approach, and your total number of jabs may be quite different from mine, which is 6, by the way. And that's fine. As long as you build strong jab fundamentals and you know how to use your jab in the 6 ways described in this video, you can label and break down your jab technique however you want. No matter what kind of jab you're trying to develop, you need to build off of the following fundamentals. First, no matter what type of jab you're trying to throw, you need to remember it is a full body punch thrown from the ground up.
The most important thing on a jab is your footwork.
You want to push off the back foot and drive hard.
While it's true that the jab can be more of an arm punch than, say, a cross or a big left hook, it is possible to use the whole body without committing the whole body in the way you would with a big power shot. And that is what we want out of our jab, because a full body punch is usually more energy efficient and more powerful, plus we need that leg drive and full body involvement to achieve proper alignment and open up all the different stepping options we need to move while punching. While we're on the subject of moving with the jab and driving from the ground up, let's discuss stepping. Do you need to step in with the jab? Many coaches say this is fundamental.
And also step forward with your front leg.
Boxing stance, I'm gonna step into it. Bop.
I disagree. Stepping is a useful option that will help you close the gap and add power and reach and speed, but it's only an option. And sometimes it's a really bad option. Obviously, stepping in with the jab adds power to the shot, but equally it adds power to your opponent's counterpunch. For example, if your opponent is working one of those front end same time counterpunches, which you can learn about here, they can run you into a very damaging shot if you habitually step forward, launching yourself into your opponent's range every time you initiate offense.
In order to step, you've got to take the weight off of your front foot. And as soon as you do that, you're propulsing yourself right into your opponent's range where he can hit you, and you're almost telegraphing the punch.
If you step in with every jab you throw, I guarantee you smother your range more often than you think, and you're also making it harder to double up with the lead hand. So let me be clear, there is nothing wrong with stepping in with your jab when it's called for, but develop your ability to step left, step right, step back, step around. Keep your options open. It makes your jab less predictable and more effective. The third jab fundamental I want to talk to you about is alignment.
You want to have your shoulder, your elbow, and your fist behind the punch.
This means finishing the jab with your hip, shoulder, elbow, and fist lined up in front of you, straight out like a spear, or like Russ Amber says, like the barrel of a gun.
They're looking right down the barrel of the gun.
Aligning your body in this way provides several benefits. First, proper alignment makes your jab harder. allowing you to deliver all of that force you've generated off the back foot and the rotation of the hips and shoulders in a straight line with no energy leaks. For the same reason you don't see spears designed with bends like crazy straws, you don't want to throw your jab with poor alignment. Proper alignment is also going to make your jab come out faster, with no athletic improvements required. This is because proper alignment in the start position sets you up to punch in a straight line, which we know to be the shortest distance between 2 points. Lastly, proper alignment will give you some defensive benefits. Keeping your shoulder, elbow, and fist aligned behind the punch at extension not only creates passive defensive traffic, but gives you active parrying tools that you can deploy at a moment's notice. I highlighted some of these tools in a video on advanced elbow blocks that you can find over on Shortboxing's channel. By keeping the hip and shoulder a little further in front of the face, proper alignment also gives you a little extra shoulder coverage. At the same time, putting the hip and shoulder forward typically puts the head a little further back, rotating it away from the opponent, giving you added space to work with. So with all of these different benefits in mind, it's pretty clear that whether you're throwing a hard power jab or a quick flick, proper alignment is key. We touched on this a little bit in the previous section where we discussed how proper alignment gives you better shoulder coverage, more distance between you and your opponent, defensive traffic, and active parrying tools, but there's much more to it. The following defensive cues should help out no matter what type of jab you choose to throw. 1. Get used to the shoulder lifting to touch the chin every time you jab. As the jab extends and the fist turns over, the shoulder lifts up. Remind yourself to turtle down into that shoulder without tilting the head forward to keep your chin safe.
And my chin touches my shoulder to make sure that I am extended and to guard me from a counterpunch.
2. Make sure that the offhand, the non-punching hand, remains in contact with the face. Some people recommend holding it on the cheekbone just below the eye, others recommend holding it touching the chin. I'm not too picky as long as you understand what punching lanes you have closed and which are open to your opponent. For example, I may choose to shut the jab down by laying my hand across that punching lane in a parrying shape, or I might hold my hand up high on the cheekbone to shut down the hook. Dictating these openings through different hand positions gives us some measure of control over our opponent's offense, allowing us to set the stage for some very nasty counters. 3. Start and finish the jab with the elbows in. While they don't always need to be perfectly vertical, it's important to always be tracking inward with our elbow positioning while punching, and to do our very best to set up in our starting position with the elbows tight on the body. Not only does this keep you safe from body punches, it also helps with proper alignment and speed, letting you punch inside your opponent's punch by starting your elbow and fist on that inside track. Number 4. Keep your eyes on the opponent at all times. We know it's the punch we don't see coming that hurts the most, so like Russ Amber said, we want to be looking right down the barrel of the gun with the opponent in our sights. Number 5, we need to maintain strong posture, which means no leaning in with the punch, ever. We need our backs relatively straight in that classic fighting position, with the head back and the weight evenly distributed between our 2 feet. Bernard Hopkins refers to this posture as sort of a fencing position.
Expose my head, I'm too far out. But if I get in a sort of like a fencing position, and I'm here, and I'm here, and I'm here.
Maintain this position while jabbing as best you can. Leaning forward not only puts the head in danger, dangling it closer to the opponent, it also disrupts the cross. Since you've already leaned the weight forward, you've got nothing on the back hip to launch at your opponent. The concept of proper posture fits nicely with Marvin Cook's idea of fighting stingy, which I always loved as a cue. Be stingy, don't give your opponent anything for free. And certainly don't dangle your head forward into their punching range.
Fight stingy. Whatever he gets, he earns. We're not giving him anything.
So remember, stay tall, keep your posture strong, maintain that fencing position if you can, and don't give your opponent anything they haven't earned. If you're interested in making your jab a little safer, try to incorporate these 5 defensive cues into your next training session, and let me know how it goes down in the comments. So it's time to get into the 6 types of jabs that I teach. If you haven't checked out the last section on jab fundamentals, I recommend you do so now. as all 6 of these advanced jab variations build on those basic best practices. The standard jab, otherwise known as the basic jab or simply the jab, is a natural starting point. It's typically the first thing beginners learn once they have their legs under them. It's enough to get you wins at the amateur and pro level, and it's where most people's understanding of the jab begins and ends. Even if you choose to only throw advanced jab variations, which I totally do not recommend, it's important to learn the standard jab because it'll teach you about proper extension and alignment and shoulder snap. Although the standard jab can be thrown from just about anywhere, I'm going to structure this breakdown in terms of start and end positions. This lets me reinforce these fundamental ideas about foot position and posture and alignment, all these things that constitute a strong base, all for the benefit of beginners, who after all are the intended audience for this video. But to all of my intermediate and advanced listeners, obviously you do not need to take this start position before you shoot your jab. So feel free to get up out of your chair. We're going to build a basic start position from the ground up. We're going to start out standing normally with our chest facing forward and the feet slightly wider than shoulder width. From here, take a generous step forward with your non-dominant foot. Right-handed fighters will step forward with the left. From here, lift both heels and begin turning the feet in a clockwise direction, pivoting on the balls of the feet. Southpaws turn the feet counterclockwise. The toes of the rear foot should be pointing out at about 45 degrees, with the toes of the lead foot pointing in slightly less towards the center line. Crucially, the hips and shoulders need to turn at the same angle as the feet. Everything needs to move together in one piece. There are 2 easy ways to tell that your feet are in the correct position. First, the toes of the lead foot need to be pointing dead at the opponent's center line. Second, we can make sure our feet are properly spaced and angled by checking heel-toe alignment. To do this, you need a line between your feet dividing the left and right half of your body. You can use a piece of chalk, you can scratch a line in the dirt with your heel, you can use the grout lines between tiles, a piece of tape. Whatever you use, this line on the floor now represents your center line. To achieve proper heel-toe alignment, set up your stance so that the big toe of the lead foot touches the center line, as does the heel of the rear foot. It's that simple. And that's it, you've got your feet lined up. And because we moved everything in one piece, that means your hips and shoulders are lined up as well. Specifically, what we're looking for is that the lead hip and shoulder are rotated out in front of the rear hip and shoulder, so that your body is at about 45 degrees. Angling the body in this way creates what's called a bladed stance, where the lead hand is held closer to the opponent while the rear hand stays back, loaded for bear. The angle of the body also makes us a smaller target, and it puts us in better position to absorb impact, so that a direct hit doesn't knock us back into empty space, but instead onto that shock-absorbing back leg. From here, your hand position should be fairly straightforward, with the rear elbow glued to the body and the rear hand held in contact with the face in one of the defensive positions spotlighted in our previous section on built-in defense. The lead hand I want you to keep held at eye level, maybe 3 to 8 inches in front of the face, with the elbow angled in. From here, the lead shoulder should be in view, with the rear shoulder rotated out of sight, almost behind you. If you're happy with your starting position, you are now ready to execute the standard jab. Does everything look good? If so, we initiate the jab by driving off the rear foot, even if you don't intend to step. Remember, the jab is a full body punch. If you do choose to step, that drive off the rear foot propels the lead foot forward. If you choose to stay put, that same back foot drive powers the short, sharp rotation of the hips and shoulders into the punch. Now, because this is a standard jab and not a power jab, we're not going to commit too much of the hips and shoulders into this rotation, just enough to get maximum reach and a good solid impact. At the same moment that we drive off the back foot and the hips and shoulders rotate into the shot just a touch, the arm extends as follows.
Just when your arm is about to straighten out, that's when they flip the shoulder. They're looking right down the barrel of the gun, and that's where the jab comes out.
From lockout, getting back to the end position, which is also your start position, is easy. Because we didn't throw our weight forward, all we have to do is twist the hips and shoulders back to fighting stance and retract the arm, exactly opposite the way we just saw. I think most viewers are already going to be familiar with the standard jab, so I'm not going to spend too much time digging into its different uses, but there are a couple points I want to make just more generally about standard jab theory, since they apply to all 6 of the jabs we talk about today. First, the standard jab, like any of the 6 jabs discussed in this video, can be thrown to the body. Like the jab to the head, I feel the body jab is more a category of punch rather than a single technique that would deserve a place on this list. All we have to do is apply basic body punching best practices, which means changing levels and, where possible, taking our head off the center line. Second, not all jabs should be thrown with power. Power jabs are great tools, but you need more. Striving for max power in every shot can actually do more harm than good, depending on your goals. For example, if you're trying to land a power cross and set that up with a jab, you often don't want to jab with power. This is because 1, the power jab will rotate the back shoulder away from the target, forcing the cross to cover more ground, and 2, because the power jab throws the weight hard on the back leg, which can make it harder to then throw back forwards into the cross. In contrast, a lighter jab keeps the weight in a more neutral position, balanced in the middle, and ready to be thrown forward at a moment's notice. In this scenario, a lighter jab would also be a better choice because it's less likely to back the opponent up, since it lacks the power to scare them off or physically move them backwards. I don't know about you, but when I'm looking to land my cross, I want my opponent to stay put. I'm not trying to scare them away with my opening punch, because then my cross would have to travel even further to reach them. Here, a lighter jab option is perfect, distracting the opponent without driving them away. If you only throw with power, your jab is nowhere near its full potential. 3. The best jabbers jab everything. Not just the head or the body, but the gloves, the shoulders, tucked elbows, even the air between you and your opponent.
You use the left jab not only as a measuring stick, but you mentioned to the shoulders, to the body. You also use it to hurt.
Jabbing these non-scoring areas gives us much greater control of our opponent. This can be done by blinding the opponent, off-balancing, trapping the hands, creating defensive traffic, or getting rough, shoving the hands and shoulders out of place and breaking their posture down. None of this is going to score, but it will give you much greater control, allowing you to score and set up more damaging shots. So remember, don't limit yourself to scoring shots only. The best jabbers jab everything. I hope this little digression into jab theory helps you take your standard jab to another level, but remember, all of these theoretical points are going to apply to the other 5 advanced jab options coming up next. Just as the standard jab is a natural starting point, the power jab is a natural progression. This is because power jab mechanics look almost identical to those seen with the standard jab covered in the previous section, only taken a little further. That means driving a little harder off that back foot, maybe stepping in a little deeper should you choose to step, and crucially, rotating the hips and shoulders deeper into the punch, committing more of the body. So much so that the shoulders are stacked over the center line, one in front of the other at the lockout point. This allows us to punch through the target in the way you would with a true power punch, and also extend our range that much further. To facilitate this violent turn of the hips and shoulders, you may choose to rotate the lead foot. However, this is only an option and one that is highly contested in the boxing world. Personally, I'm a big fan of this technique in the right situation, which in my experience has been whenever a hard charging opponent commits to an attack and dives into my range. In this situation, the pivot allows me to throw more of my weight backwards, while throwing more of my hips and shoulders forward into the jab. That means I can run my opponent into a very powerful straight punch while also slipping to the outside, moving my head towards the back leg as I would while throwing a big hook with a head slot change, or while slipping to the right. I love using it in this way, from stationary, like a pikeman, holding his ground and thrusting into the enemy charge. Although I love a good power jab, there are some downsides I need to acknowledge. Other than being the slowest jab out of the 6 discussed here, the power jab also doesn't double up very well. Because we commit so much into the first punch for power, it takes more time and effort to recover, which means the second punch comes out a little slower. The third jab we're going to cover, sometimes known as the backhand or flicker jab, is a huge departure from both the standard and power jab, which makes it all that more important to learn if you want to round out your jabbing toolbox. What makes the flicker jab or backhand so unique is its lack of commitment. However, for all the reasons discussed in the jab fundamentals section, you should still treat it as a full body punch that's driven at least partially by a pulse off the back foot. However, compared to all of the other jabs discussed today, the backhand or flicker jab is powered predominantly by the action of the elbow and shoulder. And while that may sound like a weakness after hearing about all the benefits of proper full body involvement, it's this lack of commitment that makes the flicker jab so versatile and so effective. This jab can be thrown from anywhere without requiring any commitment, which makes it great to surprise your opponent, break up their rhythm, disrupt their attacks, spoil their feints, or occupy their defense. It's also perfect for blinding opponents while still leaving you free to punch with power with either hand. If we think back to the scenario presented in the standard jab section, where we tried to choose which jab would be best to set up a power cross, the flicker jab ranks pretty high on that list. It allows us to pump out high volume distractions and blind our opponent with no real commitment, keeping our weight loaded for bear so we can launch the cross the moment we see that opening. All that said, there are some downsides you need to be aware of. Obviously, this is not a very powerful punch, and because it uses more of the elbow and shoulder action, it's a little less efficient. It's a bad idea to become over-reliant on this punch because it doesn't demand your opponent's respect. To keep your opponent on edge and stop them walking through your flicker jab, be sure to mix in power jabs, spear jabs from odd angles, and demoralizing control jabs if they get a little too greedy with their forward movement. Jab number 4 is the spear jab, one of my favorite sneaky lead-handed punches with a colorful name I stole from Jeff Mayweather. The spear jab is unique in that it is thrown with the thumb up. This makes it a little faster than a punch you would need to turn over, and also helps it fit into smaller openings. And it's also typically initiated from that front inside head slot, where the head rests over the lead hip, where it would end up after slipping the jab to the lead side. The spear jab also has a unique upward trajectory, which makes it viable from a lot of low guard positions, or when it appears your hands are trapped out of place. Your opponent thinks they have you right where they want you, when suddenly you're on the attack, spear jab rising up from their blind spot, threading in between the gaps in their gloves. Of course, as with all punches, the spear jab does have some drawbacks. First, it can be a little predictable if you insist on moving to that lead head slot inside slip position before you throw, but as you'll see, this isn't always necessary. If you just alter the trajectory of your arm and the position of your thumb, this punch can be thrown a lot like the standard jab, with no head slot change required in the setup. Of course, we can also use this so-called predictability to set traps further down the line, but that's a topic for another video. Another drawback of the spear jab is that its upward trajectory will short you on a little bit of range. And this isn't usually a problem if used off of the inside slip, because the opponent will have extended into your range anyway. But if you're trying to lead with this punch, you need to be aware that the range is a little shorter than a standard jab, as well as the other variations spotlighted here. Number 5, the ranging jab, perfectly illustrates the point made in the standard jab theory section about how not every punch needs to score. The ranging jab does not score any points, ever. In fact, it rarely even makes contact with the opponent. As the name suggests, this jab is about ranging. It's about measuring the distance between you and your opponent to improve your offense and defense. Beyond showing you how far your punch will need to travel, the ranging jab creates defensive traffic that can be used as an active parrying tool at a moment's notice. In fact, at extension, the ranging jab puts you exactly in the long guard position, giving you access to all of the usual long guard tools and defenses, which I will definitely cover in a future video. If that's something you're interested in, please let me know in the comments and I'll bump it up the queue, and be sure to subscribe to see whenever it drops. Developing your ranging jab will largely be a process of getting comfortable with the idea of extending your jab with good form into empty space. That means using standard jab mechanics along with all the best practices described in the jab fundamentals section, only with less intensity, pawing and probing, persistent and unpredictable, with a focus on maintaining balance, twisting if you need extra reach, never leaning, and deploying that full, strong structure of the body that's created when the hips, shoulders, elbow, and hand find proper alignment.
Stick that lead hand almost on his forehead, right in front of his face, and you kind of measuring the distance, keeping him at bay. Straighten that arm out, keep your chin down into your shoulder so you can't get hit with an overhand right on the top.
Once again, this was all discussed in the jab fundamentals section, so if you skipped ahead to here, I recommend going back there now. To help you navigate, I've listed all the timestamps down in the description. You can also use the ranging jab to set up different punches. Here's a few follow-up options from Boxing Fit Factory.
Measure, and then you drop down to, for a body jab to the body. Measure for a second, throw it straight right down the middle. Measure for a second, hook around real fast, and then throw the right hand.
The ranging jab is great, but just be careful because unless you have a thorough understanding of long guard defense, you're opening yourself up just as you would when punching every time you extend that ranging jab hand. Watch out in particular for that overhand right. The sixth and final jab that we're going to discuss today is best known as the control jab and less known as the handle jab. But that's what we called it at my gym. Why? Because its primary function is to shoot out using proper jab mechanics and all the best practices described in the jab fundamentals section and grab a handle. What do I mean by a handle? Well, just about anything you can grab. Maybe a glove, or the back or top of your opponent's head, maybe the elbow, maybe a shoulder. Each of these targets gives us different opportunities in terms of trapping the hands or initiating the clinch and different inside fighting positions, as well as handle pivots to the left or right if you want to get offline and create an angle. But the term control jab is probably better because it encompasses this jab's other use, which is controlling the range, controlling the distance between you and your opponent, using the leverage and power that proper structure and alignment will give you. The control jab can be used to stiff arm your opponent or shift them off balance or push them to one side or the other, maybe even into the lane of an oncoming punch. Keep working on proper alignment and be sure to stick with proper jab mechanics, with the only difference being that you make contact with the heel of the palm rather than the knuckles. The subjects of posture control, trapping, handle pivots, they're all too much to get into in a video focused on different types of jabs, but feel free to comment and request these types of videos and I'll do my best to add these to the queue. For now, I encourage you to experiment with the control jab using the mechanics provided and start exploring the different options that this technique opens up for you. If you got any value out of this video, please consider liking or commenting or subscribing, all of those things that feed the algorithm and let me know that these videos are worth making. 2020 was a fucked up year for me, as I'm sure it was for a lot of different people, and I no longer have a gym to teach at, so this is my main outlet. My plan for this year is to go all in. I'll be making a ton of videos, just sharing my love for boxing and honoring some of the great coaches that I've had the privilege to work with over the years. If any of that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe, please like, please comment, and until next time, happy training.